Hello, my name is Jerome Richardson. I am here today with Jim Quick. We are here for the Share Your Story project at Bellevue University's Military Veterans Services Center. Bellevue University is one of the sponsors of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation and the Nebraska Vietnam Memorial Park. Jim here has agreed to share his story so that others may know and learn from his experiences serving in the United States Air Force. Jim, we want to just start today with you telling us where you were born and just a little bit about your family.
Well, I was born in a small town in South Carolina called Bennettsville. My mother and father worked at they owned and worked at I would call it a general store, small grocery store. It's where I was more or less raised at. And I have an older sister. She'd probably kill me if she heard me use the term older, but we'd trade her for the world. But that's where we were raised at. Enjoyed every minute of it. And to me, raised in a small town is a whole lot better than a huge city because you're a person.
What did your mom and dad do?
They owned that store, so they ran it.
Okay, so they ran the store.
They ran the store.
And other than your slightly older sister, any other siblings?
No.
Okay.
She's the only one.
What did your, when you first joined the Air Force, how did that come about?
I was working for a gentleman. I'd just gotten out of junior college, and I went to work for this gentleman who was an accountant, and he was on the Selective Service Board. And one day he came in and says, "It looks like your number has came up or will be coming up," but he tipped me off about it. So when he told me that same day, I immediately went to another town called Florence, because like I said, Bennettsville was small, to the military center. They had them all lined up, and I stood in front of the different branches of service and looked at them, and no offense to my fellow brothers and sisters in the other branches, but I looked at the Navy uniform and I says, I just can't see me wearing all white and spilling something on it. And then the Army, I just didn't like the green stuff, put it that way. No offense, guys. Then it was a toss-up between the Marine and the Air Force, and I literally debated. So I finally took out a quarter and flipped heads one and tails the other, and it landed on the Air Force. And then I walked into the Air Force recruiting office.
All right. And were you married at the time or single?
No, sir. No.
So you were still single?
Still single.
What other jobs you said that you were doing at the time?
I was working for him as an accountant, assistant accountant, put it that way. And that was it. And I would go to the store and help my mother and father out on the weekends.
Okay.
So
in that small town, was there a lot of agriculture and stuff all around?
Yes, a lot of mills, manufacturing companies, and things of that nature.
Okay. Off the basic training from South Carolina, so you had to take an airplane, I'm sure.
Correct.
And was that the first airplane?
Yes, that was the first airplane I had rode on. And we went to San Antonio, and my timing was poor because it was in June of '67, which means in San Antonio, Texas, it was hot.
What was basic training like? I mean, just the interactions between people and
it was the interaction between the people and learning the military protocol, what to do, what not to do, what to say, not what to say, things of that nature.
Did your upbringing prepare you for basic training?
No. I'll be honest with you, no. I did not know what to expect.
Okay.
So this was a brand new experience, both getting there and there.
Right. And then after basic training, how did you feel about your decision joining?
I had no regrets. I had no regrets at all. After the basic training, I went to Brooks Air Force Base, which was about 9 miles down the road. Brooks is a scientific or experimental base. I wouldn't use that word experimental, I shouldn't, but I was assigned to a unit called School of Aerospace Medicine. Now, if you abbreviate that comes out to SAM. Now, for you historical fans, there was a monkey that was shot up into space a long time ago, and his name was Sam, the same SAM that I was assigned to. I worked in the office with the CEO and the NCOIC, and there was a lot of veterinarians that were taking care of Sam the monkey. I had a chance many times to see this poor fellow. But he wasn't poor, he was very happy.
Yeah. Now, did you get a chance to literally hold him, touch him, or be around him, or just see him behind in his, cage?
Enclosure, yeah. I just saw him behind his enclosure because they was taking very good special care of him, obviously. So, but it was a joy and a rare occurrence for small town South Carolina boy to see such a famous star.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. By chance, were you able to take a picture?
Yes, but unfortunately, due to movings and everything, I cannot find that picture of Sam.
Oh, that would certainly be neat. All right, so what was your next assignment?
After Brooks, I got my orders for Vietnam. Now, I might add, during that time period, while at Brooks, I met my wife, and this is an interesting situation. I met my wife, and we got engaged, and while we were engaged, I got my orders for Vietnam. So, I went to her house, we sat on her front porch, and I told her that I had got my orders. So I said, we can have 3 choices. I said, Marcia, we can call off the wedding, item 1, or item 2, we can get married before I go over, or go married when I come back. Those are your 3 choices, before, after, or call it off. She thought for maybe 2 seconds and says, let's get married before you go over. And we did. So we got married on August 16th of '69, and off I went to Vietnam in November 1st, reported there November 1st of '70. So we had a lovely 2.5 months together.
And when you went to Vietnam, describe, if you can, for the listeners, maybe some of the anxieties, or when you were getting ready to go, and then when you got there, what you thought.
Well, obviously, before we left, there was a lot of tears and things of that nature, and I had leave, so I enjoyed that 30-day leave before we went over, and there was a lot of tears and things of that nature. But I remember getting on the plane and telling the pilot, let's get this plane off the damn ground, So I went to, I think it was Fort Dix, and then we flew from Fort Dix over to Vietnam. And while flying over to Vietnam, the pilot told us that we were in Vietnam territory. And as we were flying over it, I noticed 2 F-4s flew up on our wings and kind of flew with us a little bit, and then all of a sudden they took a hard right dive down. And I remember looking out the window, because I had a window seat, and seeing nothing but bomb craters. And I said to myself, welcome to Vietnam.
Wow.
So it was interesting.
So what was your, earlier you had mentioned that your AFSC is, when we were talking, 702, which is an administrative specialist.
What, administrative,
And they can put you in just very uniqueness about that AFSC. You can end up in any single type of an organization.
That's true.
So doing the admin part. So when you got assigned to Vietnam, what was your role there?
When I got my orders, it stated I was going to be assigned to OL 1505, which is a postal unit. And when I got to Benoit, where I was stationed at, they put me in the registry section, which was off to the side a little bit from Vietnam, from the post office, a steel cage I got to sit in. And I handled all the registered mail and some little bit of some classified stuff.
What was your, other than just receiving the mail, what was some of the day-to-day activities for you, both at work and within your unit?
Well, I'll start with within our unit. First of all, there was no issues like they have today. There was no racism, no difference. We were all the same. Color had no bearing whatsoever. So we were all one, and we all had each other's back. So that made it a very easier event to be there in Vietnam, because we knew that everybody was in the same boat, and we had the same feelings. At the unit where I was working at, we worked 6 days a week. Mine, like I said, was basically receiving and dispatching registered materials that the customers brought us, and sometimes the base brought me as well, and handling that type of issue. Like I said, I was in a steel cage, so nobody could get to me hardly. But it was interesting. I enjoyed it, and to be honest with you, when I first got my orders and they said I was going to be in the post office, I said to myself, what a non-important, meaningless job that is. However, upon getting there and working in there just for a very short time, I completely did a 360, because then I realized I felt like Santa Claus because the joy and smile and happiness that appeared when people got their mail from the local.
That had to make you feel pretty good.
Yeah, like I said, it made me feel like Santa Claus giving candy to a little kid, because I mean, it was, their joy made me happy.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I remember I was on the other side of the cage in my military experience. It was always, as soon as you got off work or as soon as you got off class, you headed to the post office.
Headed to the post office.
And if your mom, or in your case probably fiancés and wives and girlfriends, you know, they send those cookie packages and I miss you packages and that. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, they make us every day good that way.
It's like I said, it changed my focus completely.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed it from that day forward. I fully enjoyed that job, just to see the joy on the brothers and sisters.
Yeah, well, very neat. And now most people would think that that's kind of a safer spot, but there was really no safe spots in the country of Vietnam when you're at war. On the map there beside you, could you kind of point out where you were at? Do you see the?
Well, this is Saigon here, the capital of South Vietnam, and right here, about 20 miles to the northeast, is Benoit.
Okay.
It was a major base. It had a lot of units there. It was a large base. But yes, we got hit. Because of that, we got hit several times.
Yeah, you had mentioned that a time particularly that you were hit 4 times a day.
Right. When it was announced that forces, or Allied forces went into Cambodia. We got hit 4 times, and it was well marked. We got hit at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then some harassment fire at night. One of the buildings hit, which was right down from the post office, was a chow hall. It hit at 6 o'clock in the morning at breakfast time. Sadly to say, there was lives lost because of that.
What was it like coming home from Vietnam?
That was different. We all felt we were leaving one war just to come home to another war. I know a lot of people have used this term, well, you got off the plane, you walked down the corridor, and there were the protesters calling you baby killers and murderers and spitting on you and cussing at you. And that's been said numerous times, to the point where some people now don't put a whole lot of faith in it. Well, I will tell you right now, I'm a victim of that. I got called a baby killer and everything else as our unit walked through the alley.
What about your parents when you came home?
Elated. There was one instance that, well, I'll put it this way. While I was in Vietnam, my wife never watched the news. Never. On the other hand, my mother and father did. They watched the news religiously, and they listened to Walter Cronkite and saying this war can't be won and da 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 da. But at one particular time, in one instance, I think it's when we got hit when they went into Cambodia, and we got hit that 4 times that day. The mail was delayed a little bit, and I wrote my mother, my father, and my wife religiously every week. Well, unfortunately, Walter Cronkite was saying that, and in the newspaper as well, that Benoit had been hit, and for all practical purposes, it was stating it was wiped out. Now, here's my mother and father hearing this, and they're not getting the mail that I normally send them. So it worried them to death.
Well, I could imagine. That would be very frustrating for a parent, anybody. And it's daily, because it's not just the news, it's the not knowing.
Right.
That, something has to fill that void, and it just makes it difficult, to say the very least. It's a difficult time for families. How about the store? Was the store back at home more difficult because your mom and dad didn't have you to help? I mean, was your presence missed there?
Maybe a little bit, because I'll do the things like running monies to the bank, things of that nature. They had 2 small Texaco gas pumps outside, and so to prevent Daddy from going out there and filling up a car with gas, I'd run out there and do the gas and pump the kerosene and things like that. I remember this is back in the 60s.
Yep.
So it saved him from that event. Of course, when I went off to Vietnam and returned and went and got a job at the state eventually, then he himself would have to go out there and pump the car, do gas with cars, and eventually he went out and caught a bad case of pneumonia and died from that. So I feel like it helped a little bit that I helped him, Then I had to cut the grass too.
So when you did come back, you were still in the Air Force.
Correct.
So what was your next assignment?
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Oh, that had to be nice, because that's home.
That's home, and it's on the beach, and I was assigned to the 511th Fighter Wing, so I had a real good time there, obviously. And I worked in, I think they call it air ops, where you keep charge of the pilot's flying hours, who flew what, when, and where.
And what aircraft were they flying there?
A-7s.
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 and I think they probably had dual missions. Did they have interceptor missions for the
They
coast?
had, they were
Coastal?
attack planes, ground support for one, and things of that nature.
And what for entertainment? Let's go back to Vietnam real quick because I just want to cover
Okay.
one thing. Entertainment on the base for you and those that were assigned there at the base. What was the entertainment?
It was more or less at that time a closed base. So what entertainment we could gather up amongst ourselves, playing cards, they had a swimming pool there, things of that nature, they had a theater.
Did you pick up any hobbies?
No.
And the reason I wanted to go back to the Vietnam on this is because you had brought some money that you were
Oh, yes.
issued while you were at Vietnam, in Vietnam.
Yes.
And that is what we would call
MPC,
Yep.
Military Payment Certificate.
military payment certificate. And how much is that big bill worth? Looks like it's worth $25.
Try 25 cents.
25 cents.
They made these MPCs from a nickel up. So you could have a whole big mess of money in your pockets but wound up with no value or very little value. I put it that way.
So you could have an inch thick worth of money but not enough to buy lunch.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's the front of it, and that's the back of it. So
Very neat. That one looks like it's as crisp as the day you got it.
yeah, I kind of try to keep something from that arrow. So
Very neat. Well, we'll take a picture of that before we
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
And then you also had some pictures of while you were over there?
yes, sir. This is the post office itself at Benoit, and it's got a nice, clean cut building, and that's where I worked at.
Very neat.
And then this is me in my cage, in my notary cage, if you want to call it that, my restricted cage, where all the registered mail came and went.
And a heck of a paperweight there.
Yeah, that's. And in that cage, there were only a few people in our organization that was armed. I was one of them.
And what kind of a rifle is that?
That's an AK-47.
I was thinking that was an AK-47 because of the banana clip there, just from where I'm looking at it. How did you end up using an AK-47 over there?
Well, I had an AK and I had an M16 and a Smith Model 1038.
But an issued AK-47.
Yeah, they had an AK-47.
And how did that get issued? I mean,
That was there when I got there.
and it was just there in the cage.
Right, it was there, part of the turnover that they gave me.
Would there have been South Vietnamese working in your cage too?
No, it was only me.
I'll be. That in itself is a. Very
I had the
interesting.
combination to get in. Well, the CO and the CO and the NCOIC and myself had the combo to get into the cage. That was it.
Wow. Very neat. I'm
And
glad.
then,
I'm glad that you brought that one. 'Cause
Yeah.
that in itself is a story that people wouldn't believe.
Yeah. This one is a picture. I think it was for art newspaper article somewhere. Obviously, it was a stage photo shoot, and
Now, where are you at in that picture?
I'm the one that's got the stamp in my hand, leaning out the window, and the customer is the gentleman standing off to the side.
The happy
The
customer
happy customer.
getting his package.
Well, in this case, it's going out.
Oh, it's going
It's
out.
going out. He's
Okay.
made it.
So very cool. And then one other thing, why I wanted to circle around. I had asked you, as you and I got to know each other before the interview, about the craziest thing somebody might have put a letter to and have it mailed. And the reason I did is because it was kind of funny. If I didn't have any stamps, can you at least go how that worked while you were in country, and you wanted to mail something home, but you didn't have any money.
Wouldn't mail it. Now, a lot of things went free. So, but normal, somebody would maybe buy a stereo unit and mail it through here. Of course, it would have to have stamp and postage on it. But yeah, it would have to pay for it, and unless it was an item that could be sent out free with no postage, which tape recorders could, letters could, things of that nature. The wildest thing and strangest things that was mailed out, and this is was marijuana.
And you would know it's marijuana going out?
Not necessarily.
Not to put you on the spot there,
Right.
but I mean, it's...
I don't even know if this is documented or not. While I was there, I was approached by two gentlemen. And they were from the Air Force unit called OSI, which is Office of Special Investigations. It's the police. And I got called one day to come into the office, CO's office, which I did, and they were there. And I was involuntarily volunteered to if I saw or smelled anything suspicious, to let them know. And I did receive an envelope one time from a person that had a strong, and of course they sent me to a little short version of what marijuana smells like and stuff like that. And this person was trying to mail out this package of marijuana because you could actually smell it.
Yeah.
You could actually smell it. It was that strong.
So the OSI probably taught you on how to do that and what to do in that
Right,
case. And we
correct.
know, talking to a lot of the other veterans, that all branches, they weren't as strict, but it certainly was not legal.
Yeah, true.
But, you know, going 2 miles an hour over the speed limit ain't legal either.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it was just a matter of controlling it.
Controlling.
So, yeah, no, I understand that. So then Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and you served there. Was that your last assignment?
That was my last assignment. I served there November of '70 through June or July of '71.
And then you separated from the service. For those that are listening, what advice would you have for somebody right now, today, if they come up and you have grandchildren?
I have 3 boys.
And they say, Grandpa, I'm thinking about going in the service. What would your advice be?
I would tell them, go for it.
Go for it?
Go for it. One of my greatest regrets to this day is I did not stay in and retire. I wished I'd have stayed in. You meet a lot of great, fantastic people. Whether you want to travel or not, you do. So, I'm glad to say both my boys, my oldest just retired from the Navy as a Navy captain, '06, and my youngest was in the 10th Mountain Division Army. He's got hurt in Afghanistan, so but he's okay today, sort of speaking. So,
Right.
So and both of them, and neither one of them have any regrets whatsoever.
It sounds like your patriotism, where you and I are share something in common, where I had no idea what to expect. I had nobody else that served in my family, my immediate family. I did have an uncle that served in Korea, and he said, you definitely made the right choice going Air Force to me. But didn't know what to expect. But my dad was pretty strict, pretty disciplined, and he could discipline better than any drill sergeant.
Oh, yes.
And so he didn't have rules,
Yeah.
holding him back, so to speak. And
Yes.
he raised 6 boys.
Ooh.
So mom and dad both did, and so we didn't know what to expect. But
No.
my son also followed my footsteps, and it sounded like both your sons have,
Right.
and that's pretty neat, pretty admirable.
My grandson, who's belongs to my oldest son, the one just retired from the Navy, he was filling out some paperwork here not too long ago, and for an academy, to start the paper flow going. And so my son went up to him and asked him, says, Bradley, what do you, is that the academy papers? Yes, it is. Well, which school are you considering? And he looked at him and says, Colorado. Now, we know in Colorado is the Air Force Academy. I guess that didn't make Daddy really happy.
Well, as long as it's the academy and its service, that's pretty neat.
Right.
But I do know that they're all very well, as you know as well. Final words to our audience. To anybody that's doing some research, I think there's one area that you want to mention a little bit more, just in case they're out there looking, and that's some of the things of your duties while you were back at Brooks Air Force Base. Some of the things that Sam had to go through, but others had to go through it too. And can you explain some of those things?
Well, with Sam there, it was a very interesting tour to have a celebrity within your group, and Sam was a celebrity. There's no doubt about it. And when people found out that I worked in that particular division, they would always inquire as to his demeanor, things of that nature. Sam was happy. He didn't. The vets would go in there and feed him and make sure he was healthy and things of that nature, and he didn't try any nasty stuff. He would sit there and let him, because he knew he was treated like a king.
Well, I was actually looking for some of that other stuff where you were receiving special
Oh
pay.
yes, at Brooks, the other stuff. Okay.
When you know
Right.
your flying history.
Right. While at Brooks, they asked for volunteers, because this was in the '60s, and they were looking for some volunteers for space or upper atmosphere issues. So I volunteered for that, and what that consisted of was going into a pressure chamber, and they would pressurize it up to, or depressurize it up to 50, 60, 70,000 feet. While up in that atmosphere, they would have you take off your air mask and do different tests upon you. Some of it would include drawing blood. Doctors would have their mask on stuff, and they would draw blood from you to get your oxygen flow in your blood. Have you do math problems, have simple tasks like writing your name on a tablet at the ground level, and then when you got up to that atmosphere, write it again. And believe me, it is quite a difference that the lack of oxygen makes to a human body. We had to test various foods that came out of it's just like taking a tube of toothpaste, squeezing it in your mouth, and giving your grade or rating on the taste and texture and things of that nature. So, then we also, like I said, did the centrifuge. I can't remember the amount of G-force I took, but it's like an elephant sitting on your chest. Then we did the ejection seat. They had an ejection seat sit on a rocket or something, explosion, and it would shoot you up in the air. And one of the main things the instructor told you was to be sure you keep your elbows in, because if you came out and your elbows went out, it's going to hit the side, either side, and it's going to take your elbow off. So keep your elbows in, and up you went.
Wow.
That
And that was the real deal. You were
That-
actually testing those the effects of flight
Right.
and the equipment itself.
Right.
They didn't have the test dummies.
No, we were the test dummies. And because of that, we were on flight status.
Yeah, when you got flight pay, and that was a lot of money.
Yeah, I think it was, in my case, $50 a month.
$50 a month. So, but I really wanted it. It's a nice way to finish up your interview because that is so unique.
Thank you.
I'd
I'd like to make one more statement.
Yes, please.
This is a tough one. I know that we are veterans, and we had the effects of war, but there's also one other group of veterans that nobody ever mentions. I call them veterans. They don't meet the criteria as a veteran, but I consider them a veteran. That would be the spouses, the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters. Because, as my wife, she fought a war, the war of the unknown. She had no idea whether I was dead or alive at any given time. And that's with any mother, father, brother, sister, whatever the case may be. They had to fight a war, not on the battlegrounds of Vietnam, but the battlegrounds of their hometown, not knowing the status of the loved ones. And the protests and the news media didn't help one bit. It just made things worse. So I honor those spouses.
Thank you very much for that comment because I echo that. My spouse literally put her law career on hold, surrendered her law license to the bar because otherwise it costs too much money to just keep a law license active.
Right.
And we raised 7 children.
Wow.
And she was a stay-at-home mom for the far majority, over 20 years.
Yeah.
And my children have benefited from that, but it was a lot of work when we're gone. And I know, I can only imagine what your spouse has gone through because as a veteran, I agree with you. The spouses do. And I know there's a lot of people, they stand up and they acknowledge that now with the spouses.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the fact that you consider them a veteran because the veteran couldn't do what they do without that support.
Exactly.
So I agree with you. I agree with you. I salute you for that because that is. I'm glad they have the spouses pins now too.
Yes. Yes.
And they're recognizing them at the retirements.
Yes.
I think that's tremendous. But I agree with you. That's so hard, and the strength of you comes from them.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you.
And we hope that you enjoyed your visit here with the Veteran Center. And you're certainly welcome here anytime, as you know, with the other activities that you do. And with that, I'm going ahead and turn this off.
Okay.